Skins, coins, mods, and markets. If you play, you've already bought a digital asset. A proposal on Capitol Hill, often called a clarity bill for digital assets, aims to define what counts as a digital asset and who regulates it. If it moves, it could ripple through open worlds like Roblox, Fortnite, and Minecraft, touching everything from creator skins and Robux-style currencies to how studios monetize and how players actually own what they buy. I spoke with Xsolla's president, who deals with the business side of the industry, to help explain its impact.
Gaming. It's not just entertainment, it's a massive economic force that powers more than 350,000 jobs in America, funnels nearly $66 billion into our economy, and now increasingly lives in digital-only places. The industry has shifted from cartridges and discs to downloadable content and digital goods. It's now running into a legal gray zone, though, and there are questions that need to be answered. Namely, what is a digital asset? Who owns it and who governs it? That's where the Clarity Act comes in. It's a Congress's attempt to bring order and certainty to this exploding, always online economy. And to unpack it all is President of Xsolla, Hewish. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Cheryl. I'm happy to be here today.
Thank you. Okay, so tell me about Xsolla first. What does Xsolla actually do for the games industry?
So Xsolla is a company that does all the things that anybody who's making a game, publishing a game would need to run the business of that game. We've been in business for 20 years now, and we work with companies of all sizes, from the largest in the industry all the way down to individual developers. And we help them with their game commerce, their game discovery, and the relationships with their players.
You say the Clarity Act is very much like the Telecommunications Act of 1996. And for those at home that are not familiar, it's a reminder, Telecommunications Act of 1996 was signed by President Bill Clinton, mainly to deregulate and demonopolize the telecommunications industry, which is basically your internet, your phones, and your TVs. So how does it relate to that, and what exactly is the Clarity Act?
Sure. So the Clarity Act is a piece of legislation that has actually gone through committee in both the House and the Senate. And it's meant to provide some clarity, some rules around how people can work with digital assets. And in the video game space, that's incredibly important because this is a fast-growing segment and a set of features that game developers are using to build better relationships with their players. And what the Clarity Act does is it provides some guardrails, some rules. It sort of sets the stage and lets people know how they can safely and compliantly work within this digital asset space. And that includes things like working with cryptocurrencies and blockchain, Web3. It's a whole area that's been, unlike the Telecommunications Act that deregulated, it has had a lack of regulations, and we need clarity for those regulations. And what it's bringing, much like the Telecommunications Act did in '96, is it'll bring some clarity and some rules that will foster innovation, bring more investment, and allow this to really take off.
Okay, how does, you had mentioned Web3, blockchain, that's a lot of like out of this world kind of content right now for the average gamer. How does that kind of relate, and how does the Clarity Act relate to the average gamer?
So it's a great question. These are concepts that are kind of out there. Most people don't really know about them, don't really care about them. A lot of that is due to the fact that there have not been great use cases yet due to the lack of clarity that's stifled innovation and investment. But gamers really should care about this because we are moving increasingly towards a very decentralized sort of economy within games. A lot of user-generated content, player-driven economies. And what things like the Clarity Act do is they allow developers to use these technologies, Web3, blockchain, to be able to really build better ecosystems for players, where players can have ownership over the things that they create or that they earn. A lot of games now, we see that the divide between the creator and the consumer have kind of eroded. You look at things like Roblox, and people are making their own games on Roblox and making their own assets. So the Clarity Act would allow companies to let players own those digital assets and benefit from them in the same way that musicians benefit from royalties. They can be traded and resold. So that's all around the sort of play to earn and own economy. But then there's also the ability for, with this clarity, for rewarded content to come in and benefit players. And what I mean by that is you could be playing a game for a long time and you could get rewarded with a coupon to your favorite bag of chips. And if it's a digital asset, you could actually, if you're like, I don't like chips, but you could sell those to somebody else that does like chips. And all of a sudden you could become a big chip baron in the game and collect a lot of, these chip coupons and sell them without getting hit with, taxes or all of a sudden you're a securities trader, something like that, which are some concerns that have been out there now. And the Clarity Act clears the way for these things that are really meant to be just digital assets to be held and traded and for players to benefit from them.
For the average gamer, can you give me another example of an everyday, maybe not everyday, because this is kind of the back end of things, how it would eventually affect them? How does it trickle down?
Sure, to the players themselves.
Right.
Yeah, so again, if you've spent a lot of time playing a game, in most games you earn things within the game. It could be like a magical sword or something. You earn an asset for your character. But that is still technically owned by the developer. So as a player, the things like the Clarity Act and being able to compliantly shift over to blockchain and use this technology shifts that ownership to the player themselves. So the player can then do whatever they want with that item. And that starts to unlock a whole type of gaming called play to earn, where you actually can earn based on your playtime. And maybe you've played a game for 1,000 hours, right, over several years, and you've got this great collection of items and stuff for your character, and you're done playing the game. Well, if you own all of that content, you could then trade it with somebody who's in another game for their character, and you could, benefit from that in a way that you can't now. So it allows you just to have ownership over what you've earned. It unlocks the ability for developers and brands to reward you for the time that you've spent playing, and for you then to be able to take those rewards and go out and do whatever you want with them, trade them, sell them, do whatever, right? So it just really unlocks this ability to benefit in a bigger way from what you're already doing playing games.
Gotcha. For somebody who's never heard of play to earn, can you explain what that is exactly and maybe give a little bit more of a clear example? Sure.
So play to earn is a concept that has come about through Web3 games. These are games that are built on blockchain technology. It has yet to really get over to what we call Web2 games, which are the games we're all familiar with, right? And play to earn means that you spend time playing the game and you unlock things within the game that could be, you go gold mining and you mine a lot of gold in the game. Well, traditionally, you can only use that gold to buy things for yourself as a player. But with play to earn, you actually own that digital gold and you can resell it to other players. You can do whatever you want. You could gift it. You could do whatever you want with it. It could even technically travel with you to another game if the developers have worked together on the back end. And it allows you to literally earn from playing a game. And to date, you kind of just spend money to play a game, right? The people earning are the developers, which is great.
Frustrated.
They're getting frustrated.
Yeah.
But it even goes beyond that. Like I said, we have a real momentum of players becoming creators, and they're building things within games now, which is amazing. This allows them to actually benefit and earn from those things that they build and create. The same way as I mentioned, royalties, in the music industry or other creative industries. So you could think of play to earn even as a way to earn royalties on things that as a player you've built within a game and done. And at the end of the day, that's just beneficial for the players and rewards them for what they're doing.
I know that there's been a lot of frustration, like I mentioned before. Can you name why, what's going on in the games industry right now? Why are gamers frustrated? Why are developers frustrated? And how does the Clarity Act kind of all tie into all of that?
Sure. So there's several things. For players, there's been a lot of frustration because with the lack of regulations or lack of clarity on how companies can handle these digital assets, you've had play-to-earn games come along that have ended up hurting players because there's fraud or there's just unclear rules that really make it not a viable economy, player economy. And people have ended up getting burned on those or losing out. So on the one hand, this brings some structure to this whole Wild West sort of play-to-earn market. But beyond that, it also allows bigger brands, bigger companies to come in and start to use these digital assets in ways that they have been unable to before, rewarding players. It could unlock, we believe, a new form of acquisition and discovery for games. For developers, they've been frustrated because the lack of clarity has it's stifled innovation. People aren't sure, okay, it's a new technology, but what can I do with it that's not going to get me hit with big tax penalties or fined by the SEC or things like that, because somehow I've veered into the world of securities because people are buying and selling things that have value that I never intended, but I created it as a developer. So there's that part. There's also the part of just unlocking new investments. There's a lot of investments that are capital that's sitting on the sidelines that really can't invest into this new technology, again, because they're worried about what are the rules? Is our investment going to just go worthless because somehow a rule was interpreted a different way because it's not clearly defined? So that's stifled innovation and investment. And that's been really important because the games industry has gone through a period of large layoffs over the past few years. 35,000 plus people have lost their jobs. And that's cyclical. This happens in the games industry.
Yeah.
And when it happens, though, it usually means that there's a new spark of innovation that comes up as a lot of these developers start their own companies.
Right.
And at the moment, they're all locked out from a huge potential source of capital coming from the blockchain world or the crypto world because it's unclear how they could build compliantly.
Oh, interesting. You've mentioned blockchain and Web3 a couple of times, okay? For maybe someone that's not familiar, maybe a parent of their child is watching, their kid is a gamer and they're a parent trying to understand this world. What exactly is a blockchain? I mean, that word has been thrown around a lot, but what exactly is it in terms of the games world?
Sure. So at its most simple level, it's a piece of technology that allows you to track who owns something, and it verifies itself in a very decentralized way. And what it does is it puts ownership into the hands of the gamers or the individual versus in the hands of the company. And as an individual, when you own something, you can do whatever you want with it. So the blockchain is just a technology that helps to clarify ownership of these digital items and these digital assets at the individual level versus a particular company that might build its own governance or form of ownership of who owns things.
So then is Web3 the platform? I know, like, for my understanding of it is that Web 2 is like the internet as we know it right now. And then Web 3 is like a almost virtual type augmented thing. What is that?
Sure. So Web 3 is simply the next iteration of the current internet. And you're right. Web 2 is the internet as we know it today. Originally, Web 1 was early versions of internet. It was just you would go and you could read things online. Web 2, there's video, there's much more engagement. You're able to be social. It's a social internet. Web 3 is simply the next evolution of the internet where digital assets, individual ownership, decentralized control, these are all phrases, I know, but it means that everybody kind of gets to do what they want. And it's much like the real world, where if you go out and you buy, a new backpack, you own that backpack and you can do whatever you want with it. And that's the idea on Web 3, that it's decentralized. You go, you earn, you purchase, you take ownership of things, and then they can move around with you.
Gotcha. Okay. Now that we've understand some of these things, let's go back to the Clarity Act. So you guys are kind of helping to facilitate some of the back-end business development of the industry. I guess, what's your stake in it, and who else is supporting this bill? Is it bipartisan?
Yes. So the Clarity Act is a bipartisan bill, and it's supported by members such as Representative French Hill, Representative Richie Torres, and a number of other representatives from both sides of the aisle. So it's great to see them coming together to put this bill forward, because there is a pretty common understanding that we need this. This is where the world is moving. A number of other countries are ahead of us on this already, so we are missing out a little bit. But it is something that is meant to, again, provide clarity on how to work with this new technology.
Let's actually touch on that a little bit. It's kind of globally, where does the U.S. stand in terms of digital asset regulation?
Yeah, we're certainly behind the curve. You have countries like Singapore, United Arab Emirates, the United Kingdom even, that all have much clearer regulations and rules for how to work with this technology. And the byproduct of that is that not only are we stifling innovation and we're seeing innovation occur in those countries, but revenue is flowing there too in the form of investments, new companies starting up. And that kind of is something that should be here in the US, right? We're very proud about being innovators and advancing technology. So this is a case where we're kind of missing out because we just don't have clear rules, and that's prohibiting people from engaging fully.
So we're missing out on opportunities. If this bill were to pass, what does the games world look like?
Yeah, so the games world would look, I think, much more decentralized. That's a term I've used a few times.
A few times, yeah.
So
what is it like? Yeah,
yeah,
give
exactly.
me like an imagery of.
So decentralized simply means that ownership and control is spread out across. It's decentralized. It's spread out across the many versus the few, and that is things like how are economies sort of driven? What the free market is a decentralized basically idea. So it's basically bringing a free market to the games industry in the way that players engage with their games and ownership of their items, things like that.
With that ownership, though, what does that really mean for, is there going to be lots more games, you think, or more indie games? How do you foresee, do you think the US games market will skyrocket and bring a whole new perspective?
What it could mean for the industry, what would it look like post-Clarity Act when great innovation can happen, capital can flow? What does that actually look like?
Right.
I think the exciting thing is we don't know exactly what it looks like, but we do know that there's opportunity there. There's empowerment for players. You know, if you look sort of back historically in the games space, currently the big monetization sort of business model within games is free to play. And that is a concept that really was not around in the beginning of games. When games first started, so what I'm getting at is it could adjust the business model, right? And it could unlock a whole new business model for games. And initially games were just, you bought the game, you paid it up front, paid your $60, and you owned that game. And then came along free to play, where you could play a game for free, but you could spend almost unlimited amounts of money in the games that you liked to get better equipment or new characters or whatever it might be. And that was a real boon to the industry worldwide. Revenues skyrocketed because it unlocked so much potential. So that's what we think here is like we now are at a stage where we have a new technology that aligns with a lot of what's happening outside of games in the sense of people being able to have more control over what they're doing online. And we think that that unlocks new business models such as play to earn, but also within the world of rewards and advertising. So it unlocks a whole new area or a whole lot of new opportunity for new business models to emerge that could drive even further growth within the industry. And most game companies are based here in the US, so we really want them to continue succeeding.
Thank you for explaining that in a different way. Let's go back to the bill. I know we said it's a bipartisan bill, and there, what are the politicians saying about this Clarity Act, both for and against?
So like any bill, there are supporters and detractors. So the people supporting it, really a lot of what I've already said, the fact they're supporting it because they see that this is a technology that has a lot of potential that is being stifled through lack of just clear regulations, and companies are getting fined for doing things that they thought were good or that were following the letter of the law, but somehow they got interpreted in a way and became a security or something like that, and they get into trouble. So the supporters are like, let's create guardrails, clear rules, and unlock all of that innovation, all of that investment. The detractors are saying, well, on one hand, it may bring too much deregulation to this industry. The rules are not as clearly defined as they should be, or the rules are being enforced by not the SEC, but by another branch of the government, and we're not sure we're comfortable with that. So there's some concern around that. On the flip side, there are also concerns around it being too onerous, that the guardrails are too strict. So you have both sides kind of coming at it from it's too loose, it's too strict, what is it? But at the end of the day, there's a pretty broad consensus that this is worthwhile, and it did pass committees from both the House and the Senate, and should be coming up for votes on within Congress, hopefully December, January, and then get into law shortly after.
Is there any big gamers or big companies that are also mixed in on this conversation? Absolutely,
Cheryl. So Epic Games, one of the biggest game companies in the world, has come out in support of Web3 blockchain technology. They see a lot of opportunity there. You have many other game companies out there that have embraced it. Mythical is a game company that's been doing some really cool things with digital assets. And then you also have investors such as Andreessen Horowitz that have really invested into this space heavily, as well as a number of infrastructure companies that have built up Animoco and some others that have built up infrastructure to support this industry. And then, of course, you have a company like ours, Xsolla, which is coming in, and we are not a Web3 company, and we're coming in it from the Web2 perspective of the current existing technologies, and we work with all these game companies, and we are looking to provide them with the ability to start using this technology in the games that they already have, which is pretty, we think, for the gamer. You asked earlier, what's the benefit for the gamer? Right. Well, now this allows this tech, working with us, and if Clarity Act and all of that goes through, we can help current game companies bring to their existing players the benefits of this technology.
What is the one thing for somebody who's watching this interview to take away from all of our conversations here?
Yeah, I think the one thing to take away is that games continue to evolve. They are always at the forefront of new technology. And Clarity Act, Web3, this is all something that can empower gamers and allow them to benefit more from the games that they love.
Wonderful. Okay. Well, thank you so much for your insights. Appreciate you so much.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Presented by Xsolla, all the things powering the business of games. To learn more, go to xsolla.pro/gamer-galaxy.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.